Hey, LinkedIn family. Good morning on this Thursday morning. Uh, I'm not going to take a long time to talk about this. I want to, get right into it. And I will start at the end first because the end first is letting you know who I am and how you can get in touch with me because a lot of you may or may not make it to the end of this program. Uh, Rich Jones, Second Stars, that's number two, NDSTRTS.com. You see it on the bottom. And basically, I'm here to help frontline practitioners with certain family groups. I want to be specific about that. It's certain family groups that will be, you know, more adaptable to this method of help. And it's basically really born to help practitioners work with families and try to increase the rates of success in certain demographics. So I labeled it as new tools for frontline addiction practitioners. Truth in advertising. It's not that the tools are new. I think this older type of tools that I want you to use in a different way. And a lot of what we try to do here is not necessarily practical when it comes to time, money, and resources. This is one of the reasons why we wanted to jump in and help practitioners because we understand that you may or may not have the time and the resources in order to basically use these techniques and this mindset, but something that you can certain families would like to use and help them make what you do more acceptable. So, new tools for frontline addiction practitioners. We'll move here to the next case. Listen, when I talk about tools, I'm talking about harnessing situations and circumstances is what I do. And restorative life management, what we do is we harness situations and circumstances, use those to leverage and make what we're trying to accomplish much more powerful, much more focused than all the other distractions in life. And as we all know, mostly everything is a distraction when you are trying to work with somebody. And the thing about situations and circumstances are this: first of all, they're free. Everybody gets them, and everybody comes with them. Different type of circumstances and situations they come with their where they find themselves in life. Uh, Most of the time, these situations and circumstances have obviously all their attention. Okay. More of their attention than you're trying to get. And what you're trying to get is, give them healing tools, helping tools, life saving tools. But a lot of times it's very difficult to drive their attention toward that. There are certain windows of opportunity that their attention is driven straight to what you're trying to do, health and safety. But a lot of times the paradigm that they live under still does not give all their attention to that. And this is, I think, in my opinion, where we run into the problems that we're having as far as losing numbers on who we're actually helping. Because I always say it's like ice skating uphill for the practitioners. And also, it's very effective when you work around their specific situations and circumstances. Extremely effective because that is where the attention lies. Real briefly, my only claim to fame in this is that 40 years and roughly dealing and talking to individuals in these circumstances, families, working with people, not so much because as a registered nurse, not so much frontline like some of you that I'm talking to, but knowing people, working with people, talking with people, sitting down with people. My history is jail nurse and substance use nurse. And those are the type of families that I've always talking to. So most of my focus is on that demographic from 17 to 24 because it's the area where there's room to wiggle, room to talk, room to work. We have emerging adults who are still dependent somewhat on a support network. And that is our target area. So that's usually what I try to do. And my whole goal, like I say, I built this and thought about this and conceived it all just to help practitioners work. Really quick, the history is just sitting there at the jail, going between the inmate and my practitioners that we set up and worked with, okay, and seeing how they so many times they were getting nowhere. They're expert in their fields, and you guys are experts in what you do, but you're set up to fail because you don't have the right attention, resources, and focus in the ways that you need them in order to be successful. And for you to try to share your knowledge, give your therapies, give your teaching, and work with certain things that you need to work with, and then have support networks, how they perceive what you're doing and dealing with all those other things. By the time you wrangle that, you're not being effective. And then sometimes some periods are too short for you to even get in there. So what we like to do is get attention quickly, harness it, and then use it now to multiply the circumstances that we're in. So I think I'm probably take myself off real quick. See if I can get back on here. Um, the thing about leverage is not a static thing. In other words, when we create and find a leverage by, motivational interviewing and dealing down and putting these things in the program, we understand that leverage is flexible. It's specific to situation, okay? But the good thing about leverage is it always commands attention. And what we're trying to do is bring attention and focus to the structure. Because once we bring attention and focus to the structure that we create with them, then that frees them up to be more involved and more mentally focused on what you as practitioners are trying to accomplish. So you have certain things you're trying to accomplish, life-saving activities, but you're trying to plug those holes in the attention gap. Okay. So that's important. And when I say competition, the thing about leverage is that there's a lot of competition for leverage points. Everyone and everything, the support network, their environment, or their socioeconomic status, other health concerns are all competing with what you are trying to do. And it doesn't matter that you or we or even some of the support network believe that that's the most important thing. That does not necessarily mean that that is what will win the day. And every time something else competes and starts to win the day, win time, win hours, win moments, it decreases the ability for you to be as effective as you can. And in these life saving efforts that we're talking about, you need to be as effective as you can be. One of the things that we talk about a lot is what we call the leverage walk, and this leverage walk is extremely important. Give you an example of the leverage walk. The example that Second Source is basically born on. When a young inmate comes, a lot of times they would be obviously confused, trouble. 9.5 times out of 10, there's some type of substance abuse, whether or not it raises to what level it raises to. It doesn't really matter because any substance abuse is causative when it comes to life being off track, a young life being off track. Some are more addicted or have more physical problems than others. Some don't, but that's not the issue. The issue is that it is something else taking their mind and attention, off of what they're doing. That's very important. So in the leverage walk, what you do is you deal with each high point attention spot as it comes. The first high tension spot with them would be the arrest, the incarceration, the shame and the guilt and the fear of where they're at. That is an attention spot that is taking precedence now over everything else. No matter what we get in there and talk about, excuse me, nothing will be as more important as those things going on. So what we want to do is we want to harvest that leverage point right there and start to use that as a base to start to insert some type of structure, tying it to the leverage. Okay. And now using that leverage as a point of attention. And that is where we can start to create an anchor point to what you were doing. Now, that leverage is going to move. That's why we call it a walk. Because once that initial trauma gets over, then there's new traumas. This new trauma for this person may be now going from fear of being incarcerated or fear of just coming to a drug and alcohol to now worrying about how do certain people or family members think of me, or what have I done? What trouble have I caused? Am I going to be able to get out of this? There's certain types of things. We move the leverage, we walk the leverage down now and work with that area of concern and use that now to continue to anchor them into the structure that we are creating, with the program. So the leverage walk moves up, okay? And then it moves up the further they go. This is one of the reasons why we came up with restorative life management, because the leverage points continue to move, and where you meet them is where you have to start that leverage point. One of my most hated sayings is, let's meet them where they're at when it comes to treatment. I hate that, because a lot of times where they're at is not conducive to what you want to do. And instead of just accepting that, our thought process is, let's move them up. Let's move them up in certain perception statuses and attention statuses to come to meet where you are. It's an old sports adage, but you go to meet the ball. You don't wait for the ball to come to you. So we take the family and the individual, we move them closer to what you are trying to accomplish now. And if that makes any sense to you, and I can talk more about this. This is just a short talk. We can talk more about how we do that, but basically just using leverage to that point, using what you have. Everybody has leverage. There's a leverage for everybody. We just have to find it. And a lot of times in these situations, it's not that hard to find. Structure. Structure is important. Any type of disease function is calmed by order. That's a fact. Some may agree or disagree, but no, anything is calmed by order. Anything is calmed by order, especially when that structure that is created and brought to bear is extremely customized. What is most important to understand is that the perception must be met. When you talk about meet them where they're at, you meet them where their perception is. Okay. So we need to manipulate the perception. Okay. And this would mean structure that is customized, structure that is built with them, with the family, with the support network, a structure that works for them, not just any old structure. And that is very easy for us to accomplish. Okay. And all that really is just another attention, another attention harnessing device, is that structure. So, and another thing is, a structure should not be a hack. In other words, I don't want to get you structured. So now that you're structured, now it doesn't work that way. We must continue to make the individual that we work with and his support network aware, critically aware, that they are in structure. And this structure is designed to help a function that is not working well. Okay, because that is understood by the situation that they find themselves in with you. But you can deal with that as frontline practitioners. You deal with that on a separate note. What we do is bring awareness that we are in structure and why we are in structure and how it's in structure plans to help us move forward, and how this and structure also gives a sense of measurement. In other words, instead of continually trying to fight the disease or the illness or the circumstance, stay on point and stay on structure, and that will be the measurement. Or we're on structure and we're on point, then we're constantly doing everything we need to do in order to now increase and fix this situation, along with what the evidence-based modalities and treatments are. Because this is restorative life management is an associative plan. This is why I come on here and talk, because most or all of the people that we work with have been in a situation or referred to by people in a situation that work with people like yourself. That's why I always say frontline addiction practitioners, because that's usually the home net of where the type of people that we help the most are. Okay, so support is extremely important, because, as I said in the beginning, the perception of support must be manipulated. It is very difficult or impossible for us to control the paradigm in which that individual and their support network live. It is controllable, and it's controllable over time, and it's controllable by, again, you guys who frontline practitioners, whether you be psychological, what are counselors or whatever. You can control and start to work with and mold and shape that support mentality and network. But it takes time. And you're also working with people who don't think that they're working with you. You may be working with the principal, but the other people don't think they're working with you. They think you're supposed to be doing all the help. So what we need to do is change their perception. And I always feel like the support network and working with them, to me, the support network is your accelerator and they're your brakes. If you're not controlling that dynamic, you are, again, ice skating uphill. And in real life, that could be dangerous. And in this situation, it could be extremely crucial and critical. Okay. So when we talk about support, we're talking about two groups. First, assets and tools. What programs are available? What are we using? How are we using them? Are we considering them tools? Are we using them to keep mentally focused on what the end game is? Okay. And the end game, even though we want to heal and we want to, stop detrimental practices and procedures that can be, threaten life and threaten health, that is not the end game. The end game must be to swing through the target. I'm going to repeat that. The end game must be to swing through the target. We have to, if the finish line is here, then we need to move them, shoot for over here, through the target, follow through. The end game is a completely healthy, aggressive, futuristic, planning, productive life. Not just getting better. Getting better is somewhere that we reach on the way to where we're headed. So we take those assets and those tools and we bundle them up And we also create now procedures and mindsets that allow what you're doing to be much more productive and much more helping and get way more mileage out of what you're doing. And of course, the human support. And restorative life management is a dual program. We don't try to attempt to educate the support network. Again, we don't do that because we feel like we have frontline practitioners to do that. We have social workers to handle that. We have psychologists. We have, all you guys are expert at handling that and teaching them how to work with support networks, work with guilt, shame, and blame, and all of those things. And you must continue to do what you're doing. What restorative life management will do is create a framework in which now we can harness the perceptions and the expectation and outcomes and focus them in a way that is most positive and eliminate the aspects of guilt, shame, and blame that come along with those type of things. So that is, what our ultimate goal is to change that relationship, change that dynamic, and change that perception and increase the value of that human support. And that's very important. So just to go over it again, are the tools that we have that I was talking about new, they're really not new tools per se, but using certain circumstances in order to leverage your power. So leverage power wherever you can in a customized methodology that adjusts to the paradigm that your person has worked with and their support network, and then work from there, using that to bring them closer to where you're at. Instead of meeting them where we're at, bring them towards you. You can still go to meet them, but bring them towards you. You get a much better contact when two forces are trying to meet instead of one force waiting back and saying, "Can you help me? Can you help me?" Bring a helper bring another helper to the party. Okay. Structure is the tool that we will use in order to highlight attention and focus. And the goal here is to steal extra time and extra moments and extra intention from all the other aspects that would be detrimental to what you are trying to do and what you are trying to accomplish. This is more like healing a broken leg. A lot of times what we try to do in our rehab situations, we try to bring them in, wrap them up, and say, "Go ahead, walk now. You can come in aftercare, but walk." No, what we need to do is splint it and then allow it to strengthen. So structure will splint it and then give it time to heal, and give it a safe space to heal. So that's important. And then, of course, support network. The support network, again, the accelerator and the brakes. There's nothing more important than that. In closing, again, this is something that we accept and mostly just go by certain types of referrals. We don't really like to go out and market to people and pay, but there's some families that will find this right up their alley. It's not for everyone, but for those who it is for, it can be highly effective in multiplying your efforts as frontline practitioners and creating and working with and helping success. Okay, so you can always reach me at richardjones@secondstars.com. Of course, I got the LinkedIn presence. You can find it here. Give a note. Talk to you real quick about who you've got and how we can help them, what we can offer them. Okay, secondstars.com brings us there, and of restorativelifemanagement.com also is another avenue. So anytime that what we can do to help our frontline practitioners, make them more successful, because when you're more successful, all our numbers are risen. We say a rising tide lifts all boats. So this is what basically restorative life management is. So if there's any questions, please feel free to get in touch. We'll be back more than likely next week with another lecture of some sort, just being not overly practical and not overly simplistic, but to the point on what really needs to be done in order to increase numbers. There's going to be people that accept your message, but there's going to be also families and groups and individuals which you need to really work on changing the mental paradigm and their perceptions in order to increase the ability to do what you do. So again, thank you guys. And for those that you don't see, the replay will be around. And we'll see you again next week. Have a good day.